Inspector Crape to room 14, will you? Thank you. All right, Lanson, how are you doing? Got it all fixed up?
Everything's in order. I'll plug it in here, Dr. Ginsberg.
Good. And you're absolutely sure about this? We can't afford to have any mistakes?
Quite so, Doctor. It'll work like a treat.
All right. Oh, a little less formal, I think, so let's move these chairs around a bit.
Yes, Doctor.
Oh, careful.
What is that thing?
New electrical gadget.
Oh, one of those.
The problem with you people is you have no respect for society.
Good afternoon.
Everything's ready, Inspector?
Is, this the contraption?
Good afternoon, Inspector.
Yes, Inspector. It's been well tested.
Everything's working perfectly. The least touch will make a connection. I guarantee you there'll be no hitch.
All right, Lanson, we'll call you when we need you. Has Nurse Corrigan got the patient ready?
Yes, Doctor, quite ready.
Good. Nurse Bond here is going to stay and assist me during the experiment.
Oh, good. That's quite nice of you.
Oh, not at all, Inspector. I'll do anything I can to help. I never would have gone off duty if I thought Mrs. Wingfield was unduly depressed.
Nobody's blaming you, Nurse. You say the others have arrived?
Yes, they're all downstairs.
All four of them?
All four of them. Brian Wingfield, Emmeline Ross, William Ross, and Brenda Jackson. They can't leave. I've posted my men.
Good. Now, Inspector, you must understand that the well-being of my patient comes before anything else. If the first sign of collapse or undue excitement, any indication that the experiment is having an adverse effect on my patient, and I shall have to stop the proceedings immediately. Do you understand?
Quite so. Shouldn't expect anything else. You don't think it's too risky?
If I thought it was too risky, I would not permit the experiment. Mrs. Wingfield's condition is psychological, the result of severe shock. Her heart, pulse, and temperature are now normal. Nurse!
Yes, Doctor.
You are well acquainted with the family. I would like you to go downstairs and bring them up here. And if they ask you any questions at all, please be strictly non-committal in your answers.
Yes, Doctor.
Well, here we go.
Yes.
Let's hope we have luck. Have any of them been allowed to see her?
Her husband, naturally, and her brother and sister for a few moments. However, Nurse Cartwright was here the entire time. Miss Jackson has not seen Mrs. Wingfield, nor asked to do so.
Well, you'll give them a little preliminary talk, will you?
Of course, if you wish. You say that Miss Wingfield fell from the second-story balcony?
Yes, she did.
It's a miracle, really, that she wasn't killed. Head contusions, dislocation of the left arm, and a fracture of the right leg. Good afternoon, Miss Ross. Sit down. Mr. Ross. Good afternoon, Mr. Wingfield.
You sent for us. It's not my wife, not bad news.
No, Mr. Wingfield, no bad news.
Good. When you sent for us, I was afraid there'd been a change for the worse.
There is no change of any kind, neither for the worse nor, alas, for the better. Is my sister still unconscious? She is still completely paralyzed. She cannot move or speak. It's terrible. It's simply terrible.
Was Miss Jackson with you?
She was following us.
Good afternoon.
Dr. Ginsberg, my secretary, Miss Jackson.
Good afternoon, Miss Jackson.
Poor Jenny. What a terrible thing to have happen to someone. Sometimes I feel it would have been better if the fall had killed her outright.
No, anything but that.
I know how you feel, Brian, but this, it's a living death, isn't it, Doctor?
Well, there is still some hope for your sister, Mr. Ross.
She's not going to stay like this forever, will she?
In cases of this kind, it is difficult to forecast the progress of the patient. Her injuries will heal, yes. The bones will knit, the dislocation is already being mended, and her head injuries are healing.
Then why shouldn't she get better? Why shouldn't she be herself again in every way?
You are touching there, Mr. Wingfield, on a subject in which we are still ignorant. Mrs. Wingfield's condition is psychological, the result of severe shock. The result of her accident. Her accident is the ostensible cause.
So what do you mean by ostensible?
Mrs. Wingfield must have suffered unusual fears when she fell from the balcony of her room. It is not so much her physical injuries, but rather something in her mind that has caused a state of complete paralysis.
You're not saying, but I'm sure the inspector has been more or less suggesting that my wife tried to commit suicide. That I don't believe for a moment.
I haven't said I thought it was suicide, Mr. Wingfield.
Well, you must think something of the sort you enjoy. People wouldn't keep hanging around like vultures.
We have to be very clear as to the cause of this accident.
It's perfectly simple. Poor Jenny had been ill for months, up for the first time, or practically the first time. She gets up, goes over the window, leans over the balcony, suddenly taken giddy and falls to the ground. The balcony's very...
Don't get so excited, William. Don't shout.
It's all very well, but this business, it makes me mad. You think we enjoy having the police mix themselves in our family affairs?
Now, Bill, if anyone should complain, it's myself, and I don't.
What have we been asked to come here for?
One moment, Miss Jackson. Miss Ross, I should like to know a bit more about your sister. Was she at all subject to fits of melancholy, depression?
She was always highly strung and
nervous.
I wouldn't say that at all.
Men don't realize these things. I know what I'm talking about. I think it's quite possible, Inspector, that her illness had left her particularly low and depressed, and that with other things she had to worry and distress her.
Where are you going, Miss Jackson?
I'm leaving. I'm not part of the family, and I'm only Mr. Wingfield's secretary. And if what we're going to do here is go over and over again about whether or not this was an accident or an attempt suicide, well, I do not see the point.
But we're not going over and over again, Miss Jackson. We're about to make an experiment.
What kind of experiment?
Dr. Ginsburg will explain. Sit down, Miss Jackson. Miss Ross. Dr. Ginsburg.
Well, I'd better perhaps recapitulate what I know, or rather what I've been told. Mrs. Wingfield has been suffering for the past 2 months from an illness rather mysterious in nature, which has puzzled the doctor in attendance on her, Dr. Horsfield. This, I have the authority of Dr. Horsfield himself. She was, however, showing decided signs of improvement and was convalescent, though there was still a nurse in the house. On the day in question, exactly 10 days ago, Mrs. Wingfield got out of bed after lunch and was settled in an easy chair by the open bay window by Nurse Bond, it being a fine, mild afternoon. She had her books beside her and a small radio. Seeing a patient had all she needed. Nurse Bond went on her afternoon walk as usual. What happened in the course of that afternoon is now a matter of conjecture, but at 3:30 a cry was heard. Miss Ross, who was sitting in the room below, saw a body falling from the window. It was the body of Mrs. Wingfield, who had just fallen from the balcony of her room. There was no one in the room at the time of the accident, but there were 4 people in the house that day. The 4 people who are assembled here now.
Mr. Wingfield, would you please tell us in your own words just what you saw then?
I'd have thought I told it often enough already. I was in my study correcting proofs, and I heard a noise from outside, a scream. Went over to the side door and then out onto the terrace, and that's why I saw it. Oh, poor Jenny.
That's quite enough. You needn't go any further. Miss Jackson, would you please tell us your side of the story?
I was in the library because Mr. Wingfield had asked me to look up a reference in the encyclopedia. I dropped the book and then joined the others on the terrace when I heard the scream.
Mr. Ross?
What? Oh. I've been playing golf all morning. Always play golf on a Saturday. I didn't eat a hearty lunch and was feeling whacked, so I lay in my bed upstairs. It was Jenny's scream that woke me. First I thought it was a dream, but then I heard the row down below and looked out, and there I saw Jenny with the others gathered round. Oh God, have we have to go over this again and again?
I only wanted to stress that no one who was in the house actually saw what happened that afternoon. No one, except for Mrs. Wingfield herself.
It's perfectly simple what happened. Jenny thought she was stronger than she was. She went out to the balcony, leant over, and fell to the ground. Perfectly simple accident. Could have happened to anyone.
Someone should have been with her. I blame myself for not being there.
But she was supposed to rest in the afternoon, Brian. That was part of the doctor's orders. We were all going to join her at 4:30 for tea, but she was supposed to rest every afternoon from 3 o'clock until then.
Miss Ross, the accident seems a bit difficult to explain. The railings of the balcony did not give way.
No, she just fell over them, then very low. I tested afterwards. It could have easily happened.
But Mrs. Wingfield is a very small woman. It would be highly difficult for her to lose her balance, even if she was taken giddy.
I hate to say it, Inspector, but I think you're right in what you suspect. Poor Jenny was worried and troubled in her mind. I think a fit of depression...
You keep saying she tried to commit suicide. That I don't believe. I won't believe.
She had plenty to make her depressed.
What do you mean by that?
I think you know quite well what I mean. I'm not blind, Brian.
Jenny wasn't depressed. She's nothing to be depressed about. You've got an evil mind, Emmeline, and you just imagine things.
Leave my sister alone!
It was an accident. Of course it was an accident. Miss Ross was just trying to...
Yes, what was I trying to do?
It's women like you who write anonymous letters, poison pill letters, just because no man has ever...
How dare you!
My lord, cut it out, the both of you! Women!
I think we're all getting a bit overexcited, talking about things that are quite beside the point. What we should be focused on was Jenny's state of mind on the day that she fell. I'm her husband, I think I know it pretty well. Jenny wasn't depressed.
Because you don't want to think so. You don't want her to feel responsible.
Responsible? What do you mean by that?
Driving her to do what she did!
Say!
Please, all of you. When When I brought you all here, it was not my object to provoke recriminations.
Wasn't it? I'm not so sure anymore.
No. I had in mind to conduct an experiment.
You have already told us that. What kind of experiment?
As Inspector Cray has just said, there is only one person who knows what happened that afternoon. That is Mrs. Wingfield herself.
She can't tell us. It's too bad, really.
She will when she's better.
I don't think you quite appreciate the medical position, Miss Ross. It may be months, it may even be years before Mrs. Wingfield comes out of the state.
No, surely not.
Yes, Mr. Wingfield. I won't bother you with the medical details, but there have been cases of this kind where patients have gone blind as a result of shock and have not regained their sight for 15 or 20 years. There have been patients of paralysis who have not been able to walk for the same amounts of time. Sometimes, another shock precipitates recovery, but there's no fixed rule. Inspector, will you ring the bell, please?
I'm still not sure I quite understand what you're driving at, Doctor.
We'll find out.
Jenny! Jenny, darling!
What's going on? What are you trying to do?
Mrs. Wingfield is completely paralyzed. She cannot move or speak, but we are all agreed that she is the only person who knows what happened to her on that day.
But she's unconscious. You said she would be unconscious for years.
I did not say unconscious. Mrs. Wingfield is paralyzed and cannot move or speak, but she can see and hear. And I think it is highly probable that her mind is as keen as it ever was. She knows what happened to her on that day. She would like to communicate it to us, but unfortunately, she cannot do so.
You think she knows what we're saying, what we're feeling?
I think she knows.
Jenny, darling, can you hear me? I know things have been terrible, but it's going to be all right now, I promise.
Lanson?
I'm ready, madam, when you are.
I have said that Mrs. Wingfield is unable to communicate with us, but it is possible a way has been found. Dr. Horsfield, the doctor who has been attending her and is a specialist on this type of paralysis, has noticed a slight power of movement in her left arm. It is very slight, hardly noticeable. She cannot lift her arm or move anything, but she can move the 2 fingers and thumb of her left hand. Mr. Lanson here has fixed up an apparatus of an electrical nature. You see there's a button. When the button is pushed, a red light will appear on the top of the apparatus. The slightest pressure will operate it. Mr. Lanson, if you please. Nurse, look at the patient's left arm.
Yes, doctor.
Now, I'm going to ask Mrs. Wingfield some questions.
Questions? What do you mean by that? What sort of questions?
Questions about what happened that Saturday afternoon.
This is your doing, isn't it?
Mr. Lanson and I were the ones who suggested the experiment.
But you can't possibly place any reliance on what could be purely muscular spasms.
I think we can soon find out whether or not Mrs. Wingfield can answer my question.
No, you can't do this. It could set her progress back. I won't allow it.
Mrs. Wingfield's health will be fully safeguarded, I assure you. Nurse, at the first sign of collapse, you know...
Yes, doctor.
I don't like this. I don't like this at all.
I'm sure you don't like it. Do you? I think it might be interesting.
Inspector, I hope you don't
moment.
Quiet! Quiet! We must have absolute quiet. The doctor is about to begin the experiment.
Mrs. Wingfield, you've had a very narrow escape from death and are on your way to recovery. Your physical injuries are healing. We know that you are completely paralyzed and cannot move or speak. But what we ask of you is this. If you can hear and understand what we are saying, try to move your fingers so as to press the button. Will you do so? Thank you, Mrs. Wingfield. Have you heard and understood everything we've been saying? Now, what I propose is this. When your answer to a question is yes, you press the button once. When your answer to a question is no, you press the button twice. Do you understand? Now, Mrs. Wingfield, what is the signal for no? It must be clear to all of you now that Mrs. Wingfield can hear me and is able to answer my questions. I'm going back to the afternoon of Saturday the 14th. Have you a clear recollection of what happened that afternoon? As far as possible, I will ask questions that will save you from too much fatigue. I'm assuming, therefore, that you had lunch, got out of bed, and were settled in a chair by the bay window by Nurse Bond here. You were alone in your room and were supposed to rest until 4:30. The window is open. Am I correct? And did you in fact sleep a little? Then you woke up. You went out into the balcony. Then you leant over. And you lost your balance and fell. Just a minute, Lanza. Mrs. Wingfield, you fell. Did you lose your balance?
Inspector, I hope you don't plan on continuing.
Mrs. Wingfield, we've come to the point where you must tell us what happened. I'm going to say over the letters of the alphabet. When I get to the letter you want, you press the button. Do you understand? I'll begin. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, P. Mrs. Wingfield, you've given me the letter P. I'm going to hazard a guess, and I want you to tell me if it's correct. Is the word in your mind pushed?
This is ridiculous.
Please, quiet, quiet. I cannot have my patient agitated. Mrs. Wingfield, there's obviously more you want to tell us. I'm going to spell again. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, M. And is normally followed by a vowel. Which vowel, Mrs. Wingfield? A, E, I, O, U, N, U. Mrs. Wingfield, is the next letter R. M, U, R. Mrs. Wingfield, are you trying to tell us what happened that afternoon was not an accident? Are you trying to tell us that it was an attempted murder?
Quiet! She doesn't know what she's doing!
I think she does.
Mrs. Wingfield, did some unknown person come in from outside the house and push you? Did someone in the house push you?
My lord.
Mrs. Wingfield, do you know who pushed you? I'm going to spell the name. Do you understand? A, B, B. Is that right?
Dr. Pulse is quickening.
Dr. Denton! Right, now Dan, go on. Nurse.
She's all right.
She's all right. The strain and excitement have been too much for her. We should be able to resume in about half an hour.
No, you can't continue with this. I won't allow it.
I think you should let me be the best judge of her health, Mr. Wingfield. We'll move her near the window. She'll be all right there.
B. Not much doubt about who she meant, is there, Brian?
Oh, you've always hated me, Emmeline. You've always had it in for me. I tell you here and now, I didn't try and kill my wife.
Do you deny that you were having an affair with that woman? That's not true. Don't tell me that. You were head over heels in love with him.
All right, I was in love with him, but that's all over. He never really much cared for me, but I tell you, it was all over ages ago.
In that case, it seems odd you stayed on as his secretary.
I didn't want to leave. All right, I wanted to be near him.
And perhaps you thought that if Jenny were out of the way, you'd consult him very nicely and be Mrs. Wingfield number 2.
Emmeline! For heaven's sake!
Perhaps to speak for Brenda!
You horrible woman, I hate you! That's not true.
Brian and Brenda. Certainly seems narrowed down to one of you two, all right?
Oh, I wouldn't say that. It could be B for brother or Bill.
She always called me William.
Nevertheless, who stands to gain from her death? It's you and your sister. You two get the money she dies.
I cannot have all this argument around the patient. Nurse, will you please take them downstairs?
Yes, Doctor.
You can't keep us cooped up in a little room slanging at each other like this.
You may go wherever you wish on hospital premises, but none of you is to actually leave this place. Is that understood?
Quite.
All right.
I have no wish to leave. My conscience is clear.
I think you did it.
What do you mean?
You've hated her, you've always hated her, and you and your brother get the money.
My name does not begin with a B, I'm thankful to say.
No. But it need. Suppose supposing that Mrs. Wingfield didn't actually see who pushed her off the balcony.
She has told us that she did.
Yes, but supposing that she didn't. Don't you see what a temptation it could have been for her? She was jealous of me and Brian. Oh yes, she knew about us and she was quite jealous. And then when that machine over there gave her the opportunity to give back at us, at me, don't you see how tempting it could have been for her to say, Brenda pushed me? It could have happened like that.
A little far-fetched.
No, not far-fetched at all, not to a jealous woman. You don't know what women are like when they're jealous. And she'd been up there cooped in her room, thinking, wondering if Brian and I were still continuing on. No, that could have easily happened. It's not far-fetched at all.
It is possible, Inspector.
And you do hate her.
Me? My own sister?
Yes, I've seen you looking at her often. You were in love with Brian. Oh yes, when Jenny came home from abroad, she cut you out. You were practically engaged to him. And then, I think you've hated her ever since. In fact, you've never forgiven her. So when you saw her leaning over the balcony, well, it was too good an opportunity to be missed. So you leant up from behind her and pushed her over.
Inspector, can't you stop this kind of thing?
I don't know that I want to, Miss Ross. I find it all very informative.
I'm afraid I must insist on your leaving now. Nurse will take you downstairs.
Miss Ross, would you mind waiting here a moment?
Well, what is it?
There are one or two questions I should like to put to you. I didn't want to embarrass your brother.
Embarrass William? You don't know him. He has no self-respect at all. Never ashamed to admit that he doesn't know where to turn for the next penny.
That's quite interesting, but actually it was your brother-in-law that I was worried might be embarrassed by the questions I'm about to ask.
Oh, Brian, what do you want me to tell you?
This affair between Mr. Wingfield and Miss Jackson, was it serious?
Not on his part. His affairs never are.
There actually was an affair.
Of course, you heard her. She as good as admitted it.
And you know of it on your own knowledge?
I could tell you various details to prove it, but I do not propose to do so.
And it started when?
Nearly a year ago.
Mrs. Wingfield found out about it.
Yes.
And what was her attitude?
She taxed Brian with it.
And he...
He denied it, of course. Told her she was imagining things. You know what men are. Lie their way out of anything. She wanted him to send the girl away, but he wouldn't. Said she was far too good a secretary to lose.
But Mrs. Wingfield was upset about it.
Very.
Upset enough to want to take her own life?
Not if she'd been well and strong, but her illness got her down and she got all kinds of fancies.
Fancies, Miss Ross? What kind of fancies?
Just fancies.
Why was Mrs. Wingfield alone that afternoon?
She preferred it. One of us always offered to be with her, but she had her books and her radio. For whatever reason, she preferred to be alone.
Whose idea was it to send that nurse off duty?
That's standard practice in private nursing. The nurse would have 2 hours off every afternoon.
Now, Miss Jackson has told us that it was all over ages ago, referring to the affair with Mrs. Wingfield, Mr. Wingfield. You say that that is not so.
I think they broke with each other for a while, or possibly they were very careful. But at the time of the accident, it was on again, all right? Oh, yes.
You seem very sure of it.
I lived in the house, didn't I? And I'll show you something. I found this in the big Ming vase on the hall table. They used it as a post box, it seems.
Darling, we must be careful. I think she suspects. B.
It's Brian's writing, all right. So, you see?
Inspector, do you mind if I ask a question or two?
No, not at all.
Miss Ross, I'm interested in those fancies you mentioned. You had one in mind, I think.
Just fancies. She was ill, you see, and she felt she wasn't making the progress she should have been.
And she thought there was a reason for that.
She was just upset.
She thought there was a reason for it.
Well, yes.
She thought those two were poisoning her. That's it, isn't it?
Yes.
And she told you this herself?
Yes.
And what did you say?
I told her it was all nonsense, of course.
Well, did you take any steps yourself?
I don't know what you mean.
Taking samples of food, talking to the doctor,
Of
attending
course
her.
not. It's just a sick woman's imaginings.
Well, it happens. Far more often than you would think. arsenic poisoning, oh, and it's nearly almost always arsenic poisoning, has symptoms nearly indistinguishable from that of a gastric disorder.
Oh, I can't believe it, O'Brien. I just can't.
It could have been the girl.
Yes! Well, yes, I suppose so. Well, we shall never know now.
You were wrong there, Miss Ross. There are ways of telling. Traces of arsenic can be found in the hair and fingernails.
Can't believe it, O'Brien. I just can't. Do you need me any longer, Inspector?
No, Miss Ross, but I'll take that. It's evidence.
Yes, of course.
Well, we got something.
Yes, from the Ming vase in the hole. Very interesting.
And you're sure it's his writing?
Oh, it's Brian Wingfield's writing, all right. You know, he was quite one for the ladies. Bowled them over like ninepins. Unfortunately, they always took him seriously.
Never really seemed to me the Casanova type, writing all those historical novels and such. Very erudite.
Yes, there's a lot of dirt in history. Oh,
Thank you. So, it wasn't all over.
get 4 people all hit up and accusing each other, and get one embittered and malicious woman off on her own? Gives one some material to work on, doesn't it?
In addition to what you already had, what did you have, Inspector?
Just some good solid facts. I went in on the financial angle. Brian Wingfield is a poor man. His wife is a rich woman. Now, her life is insured in favor of him. It's not a large sum of money, but it would allow him to marry again if he wanted to. Now, the money came to her in trust. If she dies childless, then it gets split between her brother and her sister.
I see.
Now, the brother is a wastrel, always trying to get money out of his rich sister. According to Brian, she told him that she wasn't going to pay for him anymore. And I dare say that she would have, in the end.
So, which is it? B for Brenda, B for Brian, B for Brother Bill, or is it Emmeline without the B?
Emmeline without the... Emmeline? No, wait, there was something I heard earlier this afternoon when they were all here. No, it's gone.
Could it be B for burglar?
No, that's definitely out. There's conclusive evidence on that point. The road goes up in front of the house and there's a constable on duty there. Both the side of the house and the front gate were both directly under his eye. No one was seen entering or exiting the house.
I see. You know, Inspector, you asked me to cooperate fully, and I have. But you were very careful not to put all your cards on the table. Oh, come on, what do you think?
Oh, it's not a matter of thinking. I know.
What?
I may be wrong, but think it over. You have 7 minutes.
Oh. Mrs. Wingfield. You've been very brave, Mrs. Wingfield. We've now come to the critical moment in the experiment.
You're about to leave this room apparently unguarded. None of the suspects know that you regained your powers of speech yesterday, and they do not know that you never saw who pushed you off the balcony. Do you realize what that means?
You think one of them will try to...
One of them will almost certainly enter this room.
Are you sure you want to go through with this?
Yes, I must know who it is.
Don't worry, Mrs. Wingfield. If you see anyone approach you or touch
I know what to do.
Thank you, Mrs. Wingfield. You're a wonderful woman. Just be brave a few moments longer. Trust us. Just both of us, eh?
Ready? Inspector! Would you like to step into my office for a moment? We can look at those x-rays I was telling you about.
Yes, I would like to get another look at those x-ray plates.
Right this way.
Mrs. Wingfield, we're here. Is she all right?
I think she's all right.
The murderer has played right into our hands, Mrs. Wingfield. That note in the Ming vase is all I needed. Brian Wingfield would never have had to write a letter to a secretary he sees every day. No, that note had to go to someone else. And that constable that was on duty, he swears that no one entered or exited the house that afternoon. So I guess you never took your afternoon walk. You may come out of the curtain, Nurse Bond.